Alright, so we're going to do this a little differently than you might be used to. My workshop where I normally would do this at was completely full, so my first idea was to go upstairs to my office and put all this together up there. But that place is also full, so we're going to be outside today putting this all together. So what we have here is a selection of what we had available at our Best Buy, along with some used parts that I had already laying around from some different projects that I was working on, and some refurbished systems that I've put together to try to sell on eBay to fund my habit of building computers, which it doesn't work. Don't try that. It costs way too much to do all of this, then be able to make any money back from it. So don't do that. Build computers because it's fun. So the idea behind this build is that I have several friends that ask me a lot of questions, and because I do it so much, I tend to forget all of the steps because I just throw things together. And so whenever I answer those questions, I usually get a couple of follow-up questions like, but what about this other thing? I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you about that. So maybe if I do this all in one big go and try to answer all those questions, now maybe I won't skip something. I'm sure I might though, and if I do, you can tell me about that in the comments. But let's get to opening some of these things up here. Alright. So here's the motherboard that we have here, and we get all kinds of items in here with this. Most of this probably won't use. I will need the little tiny screw, and the rest of this, stickers, things like that. We're not going to have a CD drive, so it doesn't matter. I only need one of the tiny screws. Antennas we'll use. We'll use one of those. And probably that. Don't know. Not sure. I haven't worked with this board yet, so we're going to find out together. Alright. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put everything together on the box, and then I'm going to make sure that it all actually works before I actually put it in the case. Alright. So, I'll lift my screwdriver here. Handy screwdriver. Number 2, and I grabbed the wrong one because the case is upside down. So, first thing we're going to do is remove this. Before I forget to do that later, I turn it on and it goes brrr. Alright, so on this particular board we have 2 different M.2 slots. The top slot is underneath this heatsink here, and this is your Gen 4 M.2 slot, and this is your Gen 3 M.2 slot on this particular board. They we're going to be using the one on the top. I only have one M.2 drive to put in here. It is not a Gen 4 drive, but it will still be fine. So start by taking the screws out. This part and this. There's 3 screws that's holding this on. Try not to lose those. It's kind of important that you don't. And then this part should just come right off of there, just like so. Now you take your M.2 drive, slide it into there until you cannot see the gold anymore. You should not have to force it in. And this is the part where we need the tiny screw. Push that down, stick the tiny screw on there, and screw that down snugly. I'll also peel this off. I forgot to do that a while ago. Alright, now that that's in there, we're done underneath here, and we can put all of this back together again. Line all that back up. There we go. Oops. I should probably not keep doing that. Screws back into there. The age of the screwdriver is showing itself. There we go. Now, you need something to open up your boxes with that have tape on them. You can use a key, you can use a pocket knife if you have one. Simple slice. Simple slice. And those are now open. I will need that again on the other boxes when I get there. Alright. So this is the 3800X. See all of the stuff on there. And the stock cooler that comes with it. Did not opt to get a aftermarket cooler because, again, we're not doing anything crazy like overclocking this thing to the maximum that it will go, and so we do not need any additional cooling at this time. Lift the retention arm on the CPU bracket here. This is done by moving it slightly sideways and lifting. And you'll notice this whole piece right here will move up just a little bit. Now you'll check your CPU, and on your CPU you should find a little tiny, I don't know if you can see that on here because the lighting is bad, there's a little tiny gold triangle there. And if you look on this thing, which I know you can't see because of the lighting here, but there's also a little tiny indentation of a triangle down there. You want to line those two things up. What I've generally found on the Ryzen series, and I have not seen any of this to be untrue so far, but don't hold me to this, you definitely want to check for that triangle, is that the part where the arm opens to, you want the wording to face that way. And this will fall into place without any type of, you don't push it or anything like that, it falls straight into place. Once that's done, pull this arm down until it snaps back behind that part where it was originally at before, and it's in place. You're good to go on that. Now, the next two steps are interchangeable. I would say, depending. I'm using a stock cooler, so I probably won't have any issues with it. But if you're using a really large, massive cooler that stretches out in all which directions here, you may have some issues with putting the RAM in later. This one does not hang over at all, so I will be able to get to there. This particular cooler did come with some thermal paste already applied to it. And that is perfectly fine for using on this. As long as you're not doing anything crazy with it, it's most likely adequate. I personally do not like to use that. And I have some that's missing. Alright, so back from that little break, I actually forgot some of the stuff that I needed out in the shed. Alright, so as I was saying, I don't like to use this paste that comes on it. Personally, I like Thermal Grizzly. I've used it for a very long time on pretty much all of my stuff. This is what goes on to all of the refurb systems that I do. And this part, I'll probably get yelled at because no matter how I do this, it's going to be wrong. Generally, a pea-sized little dot in the center will work for you. But I like to do a little dot here and there just to make sure that I get a good spread of the stuff. Now, the reason why we brought out a little squirt bottle of alcohol and some blue shop towels is because now that I did that, I can't use this with it. So I will be removing that. Alright. Now in this part here, you want to look for a couple of things. For one, keep in mind how this is going to go into your case. You will most likely be facing it up as such. So if it matters to you that this faces up, make sure that whenever you do that, it's facing up. If your board does not have the connector for the fan close, and it has to go someplace else, you may have to turn this, but on this board we don't have to, and so we're going to make sure that our AMD faces the correct way. Also, some of the aftermarket coolers do not come with this bracket, and you just have to remove these screws to screw on the mounting bracket for those. So, put this into place so gently. Make sure that we latch the rear side first around that part, and then come back to the front side, latch it as well, and then flip this arm just like so, so that it fits snugly now. Now you can take your plug in and plug it in here. Now, if you did not already do it, the next step will be to put the RAM in. As I said, you could do that first, or you could do that now. It does not matter, as long as it gets done. And this particular board, you got one. Alright. So, usually, you start with the one that's closest to the CPU. This one seems to start that way as well. To make sure that you stay in dual channel, always skip a slot and plug into the next one. So if you have 4 slots on your board and only 2 sticks of RAM, you'll do the first one, skip one, do the third one. Which I do only have 2 sticks of RAM this time for this board, so that's what we will be doing today. In your stick of RAM, you'll find a slot right here, and you will also find a spot in the board, in the slot in the board that has a notch in it that matches up with that. So make sure that you line those two up so that they match, and then you will be able to slide it in until it clicks. Pressing down evenly and firmly on both sides until you hear both sides click into place. Just like that. And then you take your next stick and make sure that you line it up as well. Skipping that second slot and going to the third one. And then you press down evenly and firmly until both sides snap into place. And I don't actually need the rest of those to remain open. And now we're done with that part. Alright. So the next thing that we need to do is that we need to test this thing out and make sure that it works. Now, none of the Ryzen series, with the exception of the 3200G, the 3400G, the 2200G, and the 2400G. Any of the ones that end in G have a built-in GPU into the system, in the CPU. None of the other ones, the main ones, have that. So we have to put in a GPU, or we won't get a signal to know if we're actually working or not. So this one into here, like so. And then we can grab our power supply. Remember I said we would need this again? Again, use an approved device for your location. So inside this box, because this is semi-modular, we will only have 2 cords actually plugged in, already into the thing, the power supply unit. We will have our 8-pin EPS, and we'll have our 20 plus 4 pin main power for the board. The rest of them come separately so that we can plug them in as needed. Now, need it. Make sure and plug these in to here. And I already see a problem. We have an 8-pin EPS. They have an 8-pin and a 4-pin. That may cause issues. It probably would have been a good idea for me to read the manual, and I didn't. Alright, so we plug in the 24 pin back here. These things have clips on the sides of them that will clip onto the side of those receptors. Make sure that, let me see if I can turn this thing around without knocking everything over. Make sure that those latch into place and they're firmly and securely attached there. Now, let's see if I actually need that or not. No matter how many times I plug in these display port cables, I always plug them in upside down first time. And they don't go in and I have to flop them over. Alright, so on this particular board, I do not see a button, so using an approved device, we will look at this and see if I can actually read the board. I cannot. Now this is safe to do, completely and totally. We figured out which one's ours. We'll turn it on. Looks like everything is coming on here, and I messed up pretty badly. So we weren't going to get a signal on the TV even if it worked on the monitor. It's not a TV. I completely know that. Awesome. So I like the way that they connected both of those together, and I don't actually have to run two cables for that. That's going to be handy later. So these ones that come apart like this, they have little notches right here. I don't think I mentioned that earlier when I was putting the other ones together. Make sure that those notches go underneath the notches on this one so that it helps hold that in, because the clip is only on the big side, it's not on the small side. So we have an 8-pin and we have a 6-pin, so I don't actually have to worry about that one on the second one. There. And now, I knew I was going to forget something eventually. Now we can try this again. It was the middle set of pins there that turned it on. So whenever I sort those out by putting something metal, screwdriver, if I could remember what I did with it, pocket knife, butter knife, anything metal should work. And we'll come over here and see if we get anything output here. Display port. Memory modules are found on non-optimized. Did I misread the thing? Okay, so we definitely know that it works, but apparently I cannot read, and I put the modules in the wrong slots. But we are getting power and we're getting an output to the thing, so we know everything works. And I can turn it all back off now and start putting everything into the case. Fun times. After I move those memory modules to the correct and proper slots. And we actually don't need the 4-pin because it all came on. So removing those slots from there. I'll need that again in a minute. Removing this. And removing this. Okay, so if you look at this part here where this part flips up and down, this is what actually holds your graphics card into place. But because of the width of this card, I can't reach it from this side. So you'll want to go in from behind, and you can see down there where the thing is, right there. You just reach in there, push that down, and this card will now pop right out. Just like so. We'll set this back over here. We won't need that again until we get it into its case where it's going to go. And now, let me attempt to show you where I messed up at here. We'll go ahead and pop these out. Like so. Put them to the side. This screwdriver has a flashlight on it. So, if you look really closely there, where those words are right under, you can see right there it says first, and it has a line pointing to this and this on the diagram that's there. That's where I messed up at. Apparently I cannot read. So, take our sticks of RAM again. Oh, make sure that you're lined up. slide them back in the slots. The second slot and the fourth slot. Just like so. None of those need to be open for any reason. They are fine. It's in. All that stuff. We're good to go again. Now, we'll move all of this out of our way. We can get started on opening up the case. Which I seem to have decided that that is where I will store all of my items, is on top of the case. Alright. So, need our handy dandy box opening tool one more time. If I'm not mistaken, I think that's the last box that I have that I need that on. This case, I don't remember if I mentioned it earlier, the NZXT H510 is the case that we're going to be using for this build. Now, I picked this case because all of the cases that I have are micro ATX, and the only board that they had in stock at Best Buy was an ATX, and this was the cheapest case that they had that was an ATX. That's all of my reasons for choosing this case. And plus, this case does not actually look bad. NZXT is actually a really decent company that makes really nice stuff. This is a tempered glass, it's not plexiglass. It has a fan already installed on the top and on the back, which we will be removing for the cheap eBay fans that I mentioned earlier, because those have RGB and these do not. And that's the only reason for that. Alright. Starting here, move this, and that should come straight off of there. And then we'll store this someplace very safe, which where I'm currently at doesn't exist, so I'm going to put it back in the box that it came out of. And then, do they have the standoffs already in here? Looks like they have standoffs already in here, so that's cool. We'll also remove the rear panel as well. This one has a much lower chance of getting damaged because it's not made out of tempered glass. So I'm going to set it on the table that I now freed up behind me by removing this case from it. There's that. And some more cables under here. This is not bad. I don't remember what I paid for this. Was it $50, I think? Get a power supply shroud. You have loads of room back here to route your cables to where they're not all dangling out here. And built-in cable management, a USB Type-C, and a USB Type-A. And this back here looks like that. No, I'm probably wrong. It doesn't do that. Never mind. I was about to say that that looked like you could do a vertical mount there, but that's just the system that they used for removing these. You pull this, slide that out of the way, it looks like. No, I'm right. No, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. No vertical mount. Anyways, this is this case in a nutshell. This is what I did with my screwdriver. Awesome. Alright, so this one, and what did I do with the other? Do I remember what I did with the other thing? Here it is. First thing I'm going to do is remove the old fans. Trying not to lose the screws as I go. Built-in cable management here. Awesome. And we'll save these for possible use later in a different system. One that does not require RGB goodness. Oh, I like that. Didn't even notice that before. In the back of this case at the top, up there, which you may not be able to see, unless I turn it this way, there is a little small wire piece here that you can run the fan wire from the back through that and smash it back down so that it holds it up instead of just being stretched across and dangling. They thought about a lot of things. That's cool. Alright. So, this case has a filtered vent at the bottom. So, I'm going to make sure that the fan is facing downward so that it is not blowing hot air from the power supply up onto the rest of our system in here. Slide that into there. And in the box that the power supply came in, you should find a little packet of screws. Should be 4 of them in there. Like so. Whoops. That would not have been nice. Make sure I line this thing up here. In the back, get this back onto the table here. You'll see this little slot in the case here, and then these slots here will line up with the screw holes that are on the back of the power supply. So, sliding that back into place there. I'll put my first screw in. Like so. And that should hold it into place fairly decently for the rest of the screws. So. Yeah. like I said, if you build a lot of computers, this thing is very handy. If you're building one computer and you're done, don't waste your money on it. If you have one laying around, it's also very handy. If you tinker with other stuff. Alright, that's in there pretty good. Doesn't feel like it's going to go anywhere. I completely meant to throw that on the floor. Alright, because this box came all the way from... Are we allowed to say from China on YouTube? I don't know. Since this box shipped overseas, it kind of got beat up a little bit, so I don't need any assistance in opening it up. Pulling out my fans. What is this? There is a power adapter for this thing. That's cool. Lots of extra screws and a controller to adjust the lighting on it. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this is not an addressable thing because it gave us a controller to go with it. And since it was like 20 bucks for 4 fans, probably a safe bet that it's not addressable. Alrighty. Okay, I see they plugged both wires into that. It has to go through the thing, so very... Let's see, how does this go? That one doesn't move, so... These screws back into there. Just enough to hold it into place. Grab a screwdriver. Flashlight on this thing comes in really handy. Alright. Now, I get to route this back up and out through the back. I will utilize the little thingy that they gave me if I can blindly pick it out of all the other things in here. Okay, I've got to go down and turn this around into the light because I can't see what I'm doing. So, I was in all of the wrong places. That's fantastical. So slide that back in there, and then I will push this part back down to lock it into place. And now I know this will not fall the wire down into the rest of my system. It will be out of my way. Drop that down. Grab the next fan. Forward. repeat the same process again for the top fan, except for this one has all the screws on the top instead of the bottom. Preferably not losing any of the screws. That would be the best way to go about that. But never said I was the best. I tend to lose screws more often than I would like. Far more often than I would like. Alright, that's secured into place. And I will route these through the top of there as well. Just like so. Now they will just be down here and out of my way. So I still haven't decided exactly where I will be going with the controller. Maybe over there, because I also have to get a fan here in the front. Two fans here in the front. Now, I mounted the rear fans where this solid part was facing out. So, and I mounted the top one where it was facing out as well. So what I want to do is whenever I go to the next one, I want the opposite. Make sure that you check with your fans that you have. Sometimes on them they may have a little arrow pointing one way or the other. Otherwise, check with the instruction manual if it comes in English. Mine does not. But they should generally tell you which way the airflow is going. You want to pull air in this way and shoot it out that way. If you have all of your fans pulling air in, you'll end up with positive pressure, and if you have them all facing out, you'll end up with negative pressure. Both of those situations generally ends up with far more dust on the inside of your system than you would like over a period of time. Whereas doing it the other way tends to have less. So that's what we're aiming for here. And in order to accommodate that, if you look to the front side of this case here, you'll notice there are two more of these thumb screws up here, which are in actually pretty tight. Pull this out. Alright, so camera issues again. The once those screws are loose, this should pop right out of here. It may give you a little bit of issues. I worked through that off the camera by grabbing a screwdriver and pushing a little bit on this part here, because it was bent out a little too far and I couldn't get it out. But otherwise should pop straight out, and then your front panel is here. So we know that it faces this way, the screws are here, it has to face out. So if we want these to face the opposite way of the other ones, we will install them facing that way. So flip this thing over. Now we'll go ahead and set both fans here and line them up all in one go, hopefully. And then I can just drop all the screws in. And what did I do with the screws? There it is, and there it is. So, and grab enough screws for two fans. this one to actually go up. I'm giving these screws a couple of twists just to lodge them into place so that they will hold themselves there until I come back with the screwdriver. You don't have to do this on top of the case. I did not think about your arms there, holding the camera way up there. I'm sorry. Alright, so once they're in there, we'll tighten these down as we did the other ones. Alright, let me get all those tight. Looks like I did. Do the twisty ties around these. And because I left myself a little bit of a gap here between the two of them, I can route the wires in between as such. In between the two fans. And now that they're through there, if I wanted to, I could loosen those up, squeeze them back together. But I kind of like them being apart a little bit, so I'm going to leave it like that. That part's up to you. And also depending on the case that you choose. It may not have this specific setup either. So we'll stick these through, like probably either one of these would be good. Be about the same distance through. And then pull the wires through, slide that back into place. The three little notches in the back here is where those three things come through at. Once you have that lined up, this should fit exactly back into place where it came from. You can tighten these thumb screws again. That one good? Good. Alright. A bunch of wires back here in the back now. I can see about how long they're going to be and get a better idea of where I might want to go with the thing. Alright. So, based on the length of my cords here that I have, this one being the most limiting, looks like we're going to go about here with our fan controller. Maybe like this, so that I can go this way with it. So we have an idea of how that's going to work now. We can go ahead and plug that in now, or we can wait till after we get everything else in here. I know I'm going to have to come back to the back in a minute, but I feel like I want to go ahead and get that done anyways. So unhook this. It'll give us some handy dandy two-sided stuff. I'm going to go ahead and grab my shortest wire and make sure that I plug it in so that way I know I don't pull it too far. Perfect. It's not going to be too far. And I can stick that to the back of there. And then these I can pull and manage later. And then these two fans from the other side will also plug in up here. Just like this. Oops. Alright, so all of that I'll be able to lay down and put behind whenever I get that far. Now, on this particular fan controller that I got, it actually tells you which ones to plug them in. 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth, all the way up to 10. Supports 10 fans. It only came with 4, so that's all we've got plugged in. The very end here is where you will plug in, or well, you don't have to, but you can plug in the LED strips, and if you do that, then they will match with whatever setting you choose for your fans. You may or may not use one of these. You may get a set of fans that does not have one. Your motherboard could have an RGB header on it for power slips. It may not have one. It really depends on which board you buy. Alright. Now we get to do some fun things. I haven't done it in this case before, so I don't know for sure if it's an issue in this case or not. But in some of the cases that I've used, it's been an issue to get this through the top slot after putting the board in. So make sure that we do that first, so that comes through the top, and will eventually be routed this way using this slot right here for management. I will twist that one time just to hold it into place for now. And this is where the other stuff will come through. Okay. So, and that's that for now. I don't need this part yet. I haven't even got the rest of it in. Alright. We haven't even gotten to the fun part yet. And that is that I did not remember to check and make sure that these were in the right spot. I did check to make sure that they're in. And let me shine a little light on it. And it looks like they are in the right spot. So if you look at these things here, this is the standoffs for your motherboard. This has an A beside it. This one down here has an A underneath it. And right here has an A underneath it. Those are all the ones that you need for an ATX board, which is what the board is that I got today, was an ATX board. If you have a micro ATX board, you won't need all of those. And let's see, AUI, so that's probably, I think that's the ITX board, the mini ITX board is the I. The U, I don't remember what the U is. It's probably, oh wait, it's micro ATX. There's actually a legend on here. If it wasn't quite so dark out here, I could probably actually read all these things. So A is for standard ATX, U is for micro ATX, and I is for the mini ITX, or the ITX boards. So if you have a smaller board or a different size board and you're using this case or another case like this, just make sure that you read those ahead of time, because that'll save you some time trying to put your board in, see if it fits, taking it back out, moving things around, putting it back in, taking it out. Just a little cheat sheet inside there. Alright, so since we know that all of that fits, we will take our board and gently try to slide it into place. Like so. And now, if you'll look closely, you'll see that these holes here, there, across the middle there, and across the top should line up with those standoffs that are in there if you followed all of the correct layout for the board that you have. So once that's in place, now we need to go back and get the little tiny bag of screws that I may not have brought out. That's for the fan. Hand screws, hand screws. Okay. Oh wait. I'll bet this is it. The box. The one box that I didn't actually throw on the table behind me. Looky there, all of my extra stuff that I was looking for. Had I have thrown this on the table behind me, I would have found that much easier. Oh, look at that. You know what? For a budget case, they actually included a lot of extra accessories. That's cool. Nice. About that. Alrighty. Which ones are these? Alright. So you take those and always pick the wrong ones for that. It's not the right ones. Dump all this out so I can see what I look at here. Here we go. Let's try 632. I'll also get my extension so that way I don't have to be all the way down in there. There we go. And then you just start putting screws into each of those slots. Now it looks like this is actually where that other screw would have been. Did I miss a screw hole underneath that thing? Yeah, right here. Alright. So, while the camera was cooling off, I went ahead and cheated and grabbed the screws in the corner there. They were hard to reach to, so that way you would not have to listen to all the words that I said whenever I dropped them 500 times. And then pick back up where we left off with just going through and putting all the screws in. These ones out here in the open, fairly easy to get to. And grab this other screwdriver for the flashlight on it. And then use this one to actually do the stuff because it's easier to control the little one. There we go. Make sure that one was tight when I first put it in. Yeah, okay. Alrighty. So now that all of that is in, now we get to plug everything in. And I think that I probably should have plugged that part in first, because that is going to be another one of those ones that is hard to get to. Alright, so make sure that these are snapped correctly. I'll turn this up so that I can work with this wire. Around to this side. Alright, so what we're going to do with this side is make sure that these two things are on the right side of each other where they go together at. These do not have the clip on them, but the clips go up on this one. So when we bend them, they need to face up like so. And then if you can see in there, I don't think you can because the light is really bad still. But if you look up in there, you'll see where the 4 and then the 8 pin are there. We're going for the 8 pin again. Alright, so let me turn that over. Can you hold this light for me? I might not be able to reach it that way. So I don't think my hands will fit in there like that. So turn it this way. There we go. I was able to get those in. It's hard to get in there with my hands. My hands are definitely larger than the space provided to work on this at, but we managed to get it into the 8-pin tray. The 4-pin one we did not need earlier whenever we tested it, and so we don't need it now either. And then we will stand this back up. Make sure that we pull all these wires as tightly as we can so that way we know that they are not going to be hanging down on the other side. Now, we need the other wire here, and it will go through this spot here in the back of the board, back of the case, which I'm now standing in the light because I had to come around over there. So there's a slot here where you can slide the wires through, and if you look on the other side of the case, these come out exactly where they need to plug in there. So, starting with the little one, make sure that it is behind that, like so that part will hold it down. Then I will bend them back around, plug into there. Sometimes I have trouble with that, so I just like to start the little one first, so that I know that it's in a little better, a little further than the big end. So 4-pin, followed shortly thereafter by the 20-pin, and it will definitely catch that little lip if you have to do it that way. And usually I also do this with the case laying down, but it's hard to show you the inside of the computer with the case laying down because there are no lights out here, other than that light right there. So that will tuck back behind this thing to hide all of those wires fantastically, and tuck back in to the shroud behind. Now, all of these wires are the ones that came the case. That one is got a cap on it. And this is the slot for those. So I will grab this accessory that came with the case over here that I was just looking at a minute ago before I set it someplace underneath all of the other things that I have over here. Alright, so I found my thing that I was looking for. A little breakout switch here. Now, I broke out the manual just to make sure that I get it correctly, so I don't have to do this a couple of times. On this particular board, this is facing this direction. You'll look at the pins down here. You'll notice that this one is missing one pin. You'll notice on this picture here that it's missing one pin there. So you know this is facing this way. So starting at the top, you have your LED for your drive, and then you have your LED for your power on this side and on that side. So we'll start with that. Which side of this is positive and negative on this one here? Okay. So, slide in here. And that one into place. And then the power LED is always split into two. Make sure that you grab the one that is positive and put it on the top pin. The one that is negative and put on the next pin from the top, like so. Push that down. And now this thing says that the reset switch is there on that side going that way, and the power switch is on the side coming this way. This particular one does not have a reset switch, just a power switch, so we won't that plugged in. Just plug that into the part where it says power switch, making sure that you get on the correct set of pins down there, and we should be good to go according to our paperwork here. And this part is the part that goes through and plugs into the front panel connector on the other side. So stand this bad boy back up. And on the different cables that we have here, this is the USB 3.1 Gen 1. This cord right here, I actually had to look at this one because I haven't seen one of these yet. This is a USB 3.1 Gen 2 connector. I did not see one of those on the other board, so we're going to leave it capped off as it is and use the standard connector. So I'll run that one through. This cord here is the front panel cord, and that's what plugs into that piece that I just shoved through, that I may have actually shoved back through because I don't see it. And this is the audio. So we'll run that through as well. And since I probably pushed the other one through, I'll run that through and then I can just pull it back when I'm done. And since I'm not using this, I'm going to tuck it away in front of these little hard drive bays that's underneath here. Alright, so I'll come back to this side again. And This one is the audio one. This one here is the front panel one. So, looking at these things here, make sure that I line them up like so. And plug them in to there. Just like, wait, is that the right side? Make sure before I do it. Yep, that's the one. Just like so. Just make sure that they plug in, and then I can just pull that cord back through. I don't need the whole thing on that side. I just accidentally pushed it through. Now, for this particular board, the USB 3 is facing that way, so I don't even have to bend this. I just can go straight into that here. You'll notice before I slide this in that there's a notch here. There's also a notch on that thing. The notch only appears on one side, so if you flip this the other way, it won't actually push in. It'll snap into place like so, and you're good to go. And then on the front of here, the audio is all the way back here. So I'm actually not going to run this through that hole. I will pull it to the back, and there should be a spot to slide it out here. And there is a notch in this piece that does not have a slot on it. And if you look closely at that, you'll notice that one of the pins is not present on there. So you want to make sure that that part lines up with that, or else it will not plug in. If you force it, you could bend some pins, and that would be bad. Very bad. Alright. Now that's all together. And good. Alright, so in this case, we are now done with that. I need this cable for my GPU in a moment. And this back around. And if you look in there, you'll see the slots on the power supply where you can plug these cables into. I could have done this beforehand. Probably would have been easier to do, but I didn't, so we're doing it now. So, it actually was not hard, so no sweats. Let's see. We are going to have one SSD, and we will need, where is the power cord for that thing? I think it was a Molex cable. What are these? Interesting. They've included a bunch of different things. Okay. Is that? Yeah, that's it. It is a Molex cable. So I will need the one of these that has a Molex adapter on it. This one here. All of them are Molex, so I have to run all cords separately from the rest. Yep. Okay. That works then. So shine my light down in there where I can see what I'm doing. Can move all these out of my way. You'll see that each one of these are labeled here. So it says BGA1, that's where I plugged this one into. That's for my graphics card. The next one over says peripherals, then it says SATA 1 and SATA 2. So this cable here the Molex cable is for peripherals. That's what's going to power our device there. So we're going to plug that all the way in on this side, right next to the VGA one. And then the one for the SATA cables, for the SATA power, we are going to plug it in on the our side, the one that says SATA. SATA 1 specifically. That one was a little harder to reach. Not because anything was in my way, but just because I couldn't see what I was doing. Alright, so those are in now. Double sure that they're in completely. And then move this stuff over. Stand it back up. Alright. This cable only exists so that I can plug in the fan controller here. Which, if I remember correctly, should be this one right there in the middle, the red one, for this particular controller. If I can flip it half a dozen times and make it fit, that would be great. Alright. And then we'll plug into really any one of these. It's fine. Here. And how much space do I have with that? Just enough to reach there, and then tuck the others underneath. That will work for me. Now, the VGA cable will come through a little lower than the others because that's the one that will hook into our graphics card. Slide it through at the fat spot and then bring it back down. The other cable is for our SSD that's going in the back, which will probably be on this side. Alright. This thing around where you can see what's going on over here again. We get to put everything back together now. So now that we're in the case, we have to make sure that this lines up with, well, not make sure that it lines up with it, but make sure which one of these ones we actually need to take out. And this is a dual slot card, which most of these will be, unless you're dealing with an older one or maybe a lower end one. So means we need to take two of them out, and where this slot lines up with, we don't take the top one, we take the next two. These two here out. So I'm going to need a stronger screwdriver. I wanted to make sure that those did not get lost. Now, I will unhook this, which I could have done to start with. Probably would have been easier, but doesn't matter. And that will make life easier whenever I get ready to slide this into place. So, spin this around where you can see. You're going on the graphics card. You always want to make sure that you go for the top slot closest to the CPU, unless directed otherwise in your manual that I did not read. But for the record, the manual does not say that. We need to go to the other one. Alright, once that's in, you can put these screws back into place to help hold that steady. And this thing will slide back down into place, and we can put these screws back tight like they were. For that, I will use a handy dandy screwdriver. Much quicker, and they will be tight the first time. Alright. Now that all that's in and plugged in, we can plug in our graphics card now. So, again, line these up where the slots that are here, and it's dark so you can't see what I'm doing. These slots that are here will go back into place like they did before. And then the clips on this one are here, so make sure that it clips that way. And in. And again, it's a 8 and a 6, so we don't need the extra pieces on this one. So no extra work there, just slides right into place. Just like so. Stand this back up. We're pretty much done with that side there, until we get to the part where we test it and make sure that it all actually works. Well, the last couple of things we got to do here and this part's I could have done earlier if I wanted to, or I could do it now. I like to wait because I like to move the case around a lot, so I don't want to accidentally bang anything onto anything. This little tray will hold this SSD and one of these bags that I got earlier will have the screws for that. Alright, so once you have this thing off, you find the proper screws for it. This will hold this drive into place. Oops. All that is back together. Slide this back into place, like so. Get your screw back into there. Put that in place. And then on this drive, the bottom down here has our SATA connectors. The wide one is your power. Slide it in. Like so. Tuck that off the way. And the bag of cables that I had earlier that I said I would need one of. We grab one out. And the That plugs into the other side of your drive, like so. And this part comes back around through here. And I'll have to lay it down. Where did I lay it? Did I pull it back through? Now, take it, make sure that it's up, and let's see. 1, 2. So 1 is down and up is 2. So make sure you put it in the bottom one here. And these also face sideways instead of up and down. So on this one here, your board may face the other way where they plug in up and down. They may face this way. They may be here or they may be up here. It doesn't matter. It depends on who makes your board and how old your board is or new. Once that's plugged in, we are pretty much golden. Now at this point, I would be trying to manage these cables a little better. We are pressed for time, so they are as good as they will be for tonight. Alright, so make sure, let's see. Alright, so now that all that's done, we're pretty much ready to just test it and see if it comes on now. If we get some output to the thing now that everything is inside of the box and plugged in. And like I said, I'll come back later whenever I do part 2 to this project and redo this cable management right here. But for tonight, this is what we got. So, plug all of this back in. Plug the monitor back in. And now we're in the case, so we don't actually have to touch any of this stuff. Make sure your power supply is turned down. We have a button, and lots of things came on. That is loud. Can definitely say that when it comes to this fan here, yep, that's the one. That fan, I definitely got what I paid for. Cool deal. But all of this came on. Let's check with our monitor and see if we have output here. Something is going on. Oh, yep. Oh, one of those hard drives must have Windows on it. Because we are getting stuff, so we know that it works. So we are good here. With that, I'll go ahead and get this shut down. Of course, it's going to tell me that it's getting devices ready and such. I don't actually want it to do that, but it doesn't actually really matter because I'm going to wipe those drives anyways. A pleasant surprise. This part actually lights up as well. Nobody's going to ever see that because it's going to be behind the back panel, but that's there. So we'll just flip this off. This particular fan right here must have gotten beat up a little bit in shipping. It definitely matches the box. but aside from that, everything else seems okay. The others seem to be going well. I just noticed I put that one on backwards. I'll have to fix that later too. Oh, you know what? I think this might be touching. Right there. I'll move that. Let me try that again now that I moved that cord. I might have just talked bad about that fan for no reason at all. I did. Ow. How about that? Much quieter, much better. And the default pattern is not too bad. It's not far off from the pattern I've already got going with my my cooler here. It'll take a couple of tries to get it all synced up, but looking good. Alright, everything works, so now I can put the sides on. Turn it off, plug it all right there so that it doesn't drop it. Dig our glass panel out of the side here. Does it have plastic on the back as well? No? Alright, so since I did touch that with my fingers, to make sure it's good and clean. Then I will spin it around, stick it back on. This case here has a slot that it sits into. You put it in there, you slide it up, and these two little parts go into right there and right over there. Snap it into place like so, and then tighten your screw back here to ensure that it doesn't fall off if you should so happen to be moving it for any reason. And then we get to do the fun stuff. Just like so. And take this sticker off. Don't know why this wasn't attached to the plastic instead of to the glass, but of course I left a spot. Make sure that you handle the tempered glass with care though. And I got it off. Cool deal. Yeah. These shop towels are really great for taking off the thermal paste on the, it comes on the coolers by default. Not so great for cleaning glass. I'll redo that with an actual towel when I get in. Use the same one. This off. The mesh part to the front. Slide that back into place. There. Got to pull these down. Just because I'm going to cable manage this later does not necessarily mean that leaving them loose will allow everything to fit magically. Still have to make sure that I press them into the spaces where they will leave room for this to fit on. Slide that back into place there. Pull this side back too. And these two thumb screws on the side, on the back, will screw back into place, holding that together. Your case may work differently. Some cases this slides back and back on. Some of them it folds out. Some of them they come down this way. And there'll be like a button here, especially on like old Dell cases, they do that. But yeah, that's it. You are done and you've successfully built the computer. This particular one has some stuff on it already because I didn't wipe the hard drives to start, or the SSDs to start with. But at that point, you'll want to get Windows 10 installed on it. I have that on a USB drive. You may use something else, Linux, all kinds of other operating systems. Pick the one you like, install that on your system, and you're good to start doing what you like with it.